You're watching Rogers TV. The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
It is April 21st, 2020. This is your COVID-19 local update. I'm Deborah Hutchison in the Rogers TV studio. It has been over 2 weeks now since kids went back to school, albeit online. Distance learning is the new reality. Joining us today to talk about how it's going are Nora Marsh. Nora is the Acting Director of Education at the DDSB, Georgette Davis, Superintendent of Education, Safe Schools, Mental Health and Wellbeing, and Jamila Maliha, Superintendent of Education, Innovation, Information Technology. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us, ladies. Now, before we get into distance learning, Nora, I want to address some of the community involvement in this time of COVID-19. The DDSB, its staff have been very active in helping out and giving back to the community. Let's start with, I think, one of my favorite initiatives, the 3D printers and how they're being used to help our healthcare workers.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things we recognize in the Durham District School Board is how much we are part of the community and want to support the community in which we live and work. And so one of the things that the 3D printer project is fascinating because it is actually a very grassroots movement. And so we have educators who on their own time are currently using our 3D printers, as well as other organizations, to produce the facial masks that are in short order right now in the province. And so last week we mobilized 3D printers to those organizations, and our own educator with her children over the weekend produced 150 masks a day to get out there to medical practitioners and others in need of the masks. So really appreciative of that grassroots movement. We've also went through, one of our first responses, in fact, was to go through our inventory as far as any protective wear that we had that was in short supply with medical practitioners, and did a gigantic donation. We had actually stocked up as part of our pandemic planning historically. And so we were very grateful to have that those materials available, and we donated them to Lakeridge and other medical practitioners. And more recently, in fact, with the serious situation at senior residences, we worked with our food caterer, Chartwells, and we've loaned out all of our catering materials to the senior residences because they're having to adjust to having individual food service for seniors versus the big dining room. And so very glad to be able to provide them with our equipment so that they're able to do that a little bit more easily. So certainly are trying where we can to make a difference within the community. We also know we have many families in need, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as far as the technology later on. But one of the first things we did as well was get gift cards for groceries and other essential items. Almost $30,000 was our first big mail out to our families who are in need, who would normally participate in food programs. So trying very much to focus on the well-being of the community.
Awesome initiatives. Let's get right down to the distance learning. It's been, I guess we're now in our third week. The kids have had 2 full weeks of distance learning. Realistically, how much time did you have to prepare for this?
We were in a fortunate situation with the Durham District School Board from the perspective of we had a very robust plan from a technological point of view, which Jamila will speak about. So we have an advantage in that we had a lot of Chromebooks already out in the community prior to this happening, but certainly we didn't have a lot of notice. We found out the Thursday of March break, the beginning of March break, and unlike other districts, we actually didn't have Friday as a school day. So we were a little bit different from the point of view of most districts that at least had the Friday to be able to message to students and staff to take things from the schools. We didn't have that opportunity. But we pivoted very quickly. During those 3 weeks, we had the March break where we looked after a lot of the structure and the framework and the pandemic planning around health and safety, of understanding we would have to mobilize and how would we do that following Durham Public Health's advice. And then very quickly thereafter, our first focus was well-being and making sure that our families had access to well-being resources. And I know Georgette's team really led the way with that initiative. So it was incredible, I think, tremendous turnaround time when you think of the accomplishment that has occurred in a short period of time of transitioning entire system to distance learning. And we've really tried to lead with the well-being and positive mental health messages throughout it.
Well, let's throw it over to Jamila, and let's talk about the massive undertaking it was to get the technology out. I mean, if kids were smart enough and thought to bring their Chromebooks, home for the March break, that was one thing. But so many of them would have left them in their lockers, not thinking. And then there were those that didn't have access to it. Take me through trying to get the technology out to every child.
All right, thank you so much, Deborah. It is a huge undertaking, absolutely. And as Nora mentioned, we were fortunate in that we already had the one-to-one Chromebook initiative running, which had been something that we had been working on for about 3 years. So students from grades 7 through 12 had a Chromebook assigned, but as you said, some were not planning on doing much work over the March break. So they did leave some of their Chromebooks in their lockers. So that had to be a bit of a plan. So prior to our deployment plan, we really took the 2 weeks before April 6th to work to create a teacher-led distance learning model that was really fair and equitable for our students. We wanted to make sure that we were considering all of our students and their needs, whether it be through special education needs or specifically around technology and internet access. So in terms of preparing our teachers initially, we started with a professional learning hub where teachers could log in and get familiar with things like Google Classrooms and make sure that they were able to start those up. And we're very fortunate that we have teachers that are on both ends of the spectrum. Some are very comfortable working with technology, some were not. And there was a tremendous amount of collaboration and care taken in helping each other move along. And so we have actually, in just a short amount of time, gone from about 3,000 Google Classrooms to over 9,000 Google Classrooms. And we also have about 1,100 D2L classrooms. So that's the platform that's supported by the ministry. So our teachers have been absolutely fantastic about jumping on board and wanting to really connect with their students and make sure that that ability was present for our students to connect. So in terms of the actual deployment, we have a couple of phases, and the first phase was phenomenal in that we had about 4,000 requests above and beyond the grade 7 to 12 Chromebooks. And all of those requests were filtered through the ITS department, innovation, inclusive services, equity. Everybody had a hand in preparing the plan and making sure that all students were going to be supported. And principals as well as teachers volunteered to come in and hand out those Chromebooks. And we did that in a way that was fully supported by our facility staff and Durham Region Health the Durham Region Health Department. And mental health is on my mind as well. Always.
Okay, Georgette, I want to throw it over to you now. You deal with, mental health, well-being. such a change, and a change that is happening so incredibly fast is stressful, I'm sure, for both the teachers and the students. I know it had to be a lot of anxiety, leading into this. What kind of support was there for staff and students?
Well, as Nora talked about, mental health and well-being is at the forefront of our work, and well-being is actually woven into the fabric of what we do at Durham District School Board. So we know that families were receiving a lot of information at this time around all of the things that were happening. So what we focused on was creating a space that we could equip students, staff, administrators, parents, guardians, and community with well-being resources and supports that will help them in terms of the next steps and what they're doing. Because before the learning can happen, the well-being and the space needs to be created for that to happen. And so what we had done was we created a communication plan and a key message. Your well-being matters, that we are stronger together, even though we're apart. And what we did was we got resources from School Mental Health Ontario. We looked into the research, and we have been sending out tips and tricks to families during this time. And we do post all of this information on ddsb.ca on our website, as well as tweeting out on a weekly basis. So we had a communication plan which involved themes. Our first theme was self-care, because that is the basis of well-being and mental health. And with that were tips around sleeping, fueling our body, moving, and also being still and breathing and creating those spaces. We also had tips for administrators around leading mentally healthy schools during distance learning, strategies for parents about how to talk to your child around their well-being and how to listen, and most of all, bottom line, how to be patient with ourselves and take care of ourselves, because these are uncharted times. So it's important for us to know that we do need to have that foundation in order for the distance learning to work. Our second theme was around connection, because as we've mentioned, we did do a thought exchange and to get information from our families. And when we got some anecdotal details from our students, they were saying things like, I miss my friends, I miss my teachers. So our second theme was around connections and how we can connect virtually and how we can connect with each other, and specific tips around that for mental health and well-being. And we're looking forward to our next theme, which is around kindness. So our foundation for that is to be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, but it's also based in research. And we know that when you're physically healthy and take care of that with the sleeping and the movement and those pieces, that the mental health well-being is there. We are working in collaboration with all our departments, because mental health and well-being is about the learning and the success and the academic pieces. It is about equity. It is about innovation as well.
Okay, ladies, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. This is your COVID-19 local update. It is April 21st, 2020, and our focus today is on distance learning. And our guests are from the DDSB. More to come after the break. Don't go away.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Working here as a volunteer is a good way to get to know your community. It's a good way to learn how to work as a part of a team, and it's a good way to meet some really wonderful people. Learned a lot from the other volunteers and from the staff coming through here about production techniques. I'm Ken Grant, and I'm a Rogers TV volunteer.
We are back. This is your COVID-19 local update. It is April 21st, 2020. I'm Deborah Hutchison in the Rogers TV studio, and we are joined by representatives of the DDSB today. We are talking about distance learning. It is our pleasure to speak with Nora Marsh. She is Acting Director of Education for the DDSB. Georgette Davis, who is Superintendent of Education, Safe Schools, Mental Health and Wellbeing, and Jamila Maliha, a Superintendent of Education, Innovation, Information Technology. When we went to break, Georgette, we were talking about mental health and well-being. And, you know, we talked a lot about the students and the families, and as much of a struggle as it is for families, I'm sure the teachers are feeling the stress as well. I mean, after all, they want their students to succeed, and this is probably something that the majority of them have never done before. What are you hearing from the teachers?
In terms of that, and also in terms of our well-being campaign, it is focused on families and is focused on staff and administrators, and specifically on teachers as well. What we're hearing from the teachers is that need to continue to learn. So what Jamila was talking about in terms of giving them opportunities to continue to learn and grow, but our key messages to teachers as well is that they need to be patient with themselves and continue to focus on engagement and connection and reaching out to the students, because we do recognize that this is a stressful time and a different time. So our key messages in terms of well-being is that patient piece, and also that self-care and those tips. It's actually not a luxury, it's essential in these times to work with our students. So we continue to support our teachers, and that is consistent messaging with resources. And when Jamila and Nora talk about our distance learning, and we talk about D2L and the learning for the teachers, interwoven in that is strategies around mental health and well-being for themselves as well.
Okay.
I think educators tend to be real planners, and they begin with the end in mind. In September, they begin with what the overall expectations are that they want students to have demonstrated by June. So I think it's a challenging time right now, because as you say, it really is uncharted water for all of us. But I think the participation in the professional learning, Jamila, I think is a real indication of how keen they are to quickly get up to speed, to be able to connect well with their students in the learning. I don't know if you, Jamila, want to talk a little bit about what we've been offering in that regard.
Thanks, Nora. Yes, I think that it's important to note that we have almost 7,000 teachers in our board. And in terms of the classrooms, the online classrooms, if we combine the Google Classrooms and the D2L, we actually have nearly that many running. So we have, in terms of the teachers that have offered them. So every single teacher has done something online in terms of the numbers. So we look at just Google Classrooms alone, almost 5,000 teachers have established those classrooms. And in addition to that, other teachers are running those D2L classrooms. And I think what is so important to remember, and I think that both Nora and Georgette have touched on this, is that everybody is really trying to take care of one another. And so when we look at the collaboration and the care that's being taken by teachers to support one another and to support their students, it is tremendous in these times. So we have, for example, grade-like partners, so grade 1 or grade 2 coming together virtually to plan together and deliver a very common curriculum that is accessible to students at a time that is appropriate for them, because as you know, not every family can access internet at the same time. And so families are able to log in when it's appropriate for them. Even myself, I have a child in grade 7 and a child in grade 3. And when I'm working, they are logging in on their own. And then about 7 o'clock at night, I sit down with them and kind of take inventory of what they've done for the day. So it's been phenomenal from both perspectives for me, both as a parent and as an educator. And I think that we're all in this together. We're all working very hard to make sure that everybody has what they need. The other piece that I did want to mention is that we also know that not all families have access to technology and internet. And actually, Rogers has been a huge part in helping us provide internet access to our families. We had about 650 requests for internet access. And through Rogers, we have provided them with phones that have a 3-month plan. And so that they're able to now access the distance learning in the comfort of their home versus, driving to some other location that potentially has Wi-Fi. So it's been very, very positive in that, and that we really appreciate our community partners as well.
What about the challenges? There are so many children with exceptionalities that have IEPs that have, learning challenges. So, learning in a school, a regular classroom, is challenging enough. This is just more challenges on top of what they're already facing. How is the DDSB helping those children? Maybe I'll throw that over to you, Nora.
For sure. So one of the things when we were thinking about access to resources, we recognized that many of our students with very specialized needs actually didn't have the equipment that they're used to accessing for learning. And so we actually, in our deployment plan, made sure that our first response was to those families and ensuring that we were reuniting students with the equipment that they needed either for physical well-being or to access the learning. So that was our very first move as a district, was focusing on those students. One of the advantages we have with technology, and Jamila was talking about how many Google Classrooms we have up and running and how much teachers have really embraced new ways of being. But one of the advantages we have to the technology side of this work is that there are a lot of accommodation opportunities built in. And so in everything we've done, we've tried to we begin with the special education perspective, because what we know is that what is necessary for students with special education needs actually is of benefit to all students. And so if we begin with them at the center of our thinking, and then we build our plan out from there, that there are opportunities then for other students to benefit who may not actually have the same needs, but it's of benefit to them. And so we've really tried to put them at the center. And I don't know if Jamila or Georgette want to add as far as any specific examples, but for sure in the Google Classroom, the opportunities for Google Read and Write, there's all of those mechanisms built in. But we recognize learning does look different at home. We're not looking to replicate a classroom experience because the pressure on families is high, and it's an extenuating circumstance in the province. We recognize that families are actually facing some economic hardship potentially. So there's a lot of different stressors potentially that our families are working through. So we have tried in our work and messaging with educators to help them really make sure that they're focusing on those core skills that will help students moving forward in learning, but that the engagement in learning is actually trying to reinforce that notion of the joy of learning and that opportunity of intellectual engagement being part of someone's well-being versus looking at the entire curriculum and expecting students through their family support to be demonstrating all of those expectations.
So at this point, we don't know how long this is going to last. My question is, what if it lasts long enough so that we've reached the point for, assessments and final exams? What can students and parents are already thinking about that and beginning to worry. What can you say to them about that?
For sure. We know, so it's a little bit different depending on the age of the student. So at elementary, it's very clear that the ministry's direction to school boards was that there would be no new evaluation of work. so that report card grades are really frozen in time, and that right now is about engaging in the learning and getting feedback on how students are doing in the learning. For grades 9 to 12, the initial memo that the ministry released was a little bit different because it did speak to having evaluations still occur. And so we very intentionally in the Durham District School Board decided that we would chunk this experience for students because it is new for everybody. And we didn't want to rush ahead based on early information. And so for assessment and evaluation, we have provided our teachers with documents about how to work within this month. And we've said the focus is on building connections and providing students feedback. For grade 12 students, we worked with the colleges and universities because we knew that midterm grades do play a part in that college and university application for those who are pursuing post-secondary. And so we were really glad to see the colleges and universities be as responsive as they were. They did delay the midterm grades going in. And that provided us the opportunity then to work with our educators to help students, for those students who perhaps thought they had that one more assignment to submit before midterm grades went in, or were disappointed with their current grade, they did have an opportunity to improve that grade before it went in, the midterm being reported to colleges and universities. So our focus very much has been connection, focus on learning and feedback. Moving forward, we've been told that schools won't be reopening on May 4th. We're still waiting to hear from the Government of Ontario what that new date is. And we understand that there will be new information in relation to assessment and evaluation coming out at that time. So we are waiting to hear from the Ministry of Education in terms of what they think that looks like, and then we'll have to interpret it locally as far as local procedure. I think we've hit upon a few times the theme in our conversation already today is that we know that our families are living in very diverse circumstances. And so very much assessment and evaluation cannot reinforce opportunity gaps. And so when we're looking at how students are performing, we need to take into consideration the opportunity that student has had. So we're working with our teachers to streamline the curriculum, really focus in on the most important elements of it, and then help students learn those most important elements, but not disadvantaging students through grades because of this particular circumstance. This really is an unusual situation that we're living through as a province, country, and world, right? So at the end of the day, what we really want is for students to remember from this time that we work to stay connected with them, and that learning can look really different. Learning is not just about writing a test. There are many lessons to be learned during this period. I think about being global citizens, about being connected and making a difference even remotely, and what's possible for students to learn from those sorts of lessons as well.
Okay, Nora, Georgette, and Jamila, I'm going to have to stop you there. Believe it or not, we are out of time. I can't thank you enough for joining us, ladies. This has been your COVID-19 local update. Our thanks once again to the Durham District School Board for spending the time to talk about distance learning. Until next time, thank you for joining us, everyone. Stay home, stay safe.